السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم فقهنا في الدين وعلمنا التأويل وألهمنا بفيض فضلك رشدنا يا رب العالمين. In our lessons on Imam Ibrahim al-Halabi's Multaqa al Abhur, in the section on transactions, we have reached in the previous lesson the section on options, and today we're going to look at the option of inspection, what's called khiyar al-ru'ya. And it's called khiyar al-ru'ya because normally inspection takes place by seeing something. However, as we will see, what is meant by ru'ya is كل ما يحصل به العلم بالمقصود. All is anything that knowledge of the purpose of the item of sale occurs. And this is limited, as we will see, to the buyer. And textually, there's some discussion, and we'll share this with respect to the textual basis for khiyar al-ru'ya. There's a hadith commonly mentioned, and it's established as a non-prophetic transmission, but khiyar al-ru'ya is understood from various hadiths of the Prophet ﷺ, indirectly and directly by the statements of the Sahaba and the Tabi'een. And the meaning behind it is confirmed. The meaning behind it is confirmed through reason. Why? Because if you haven't seen something, how can you be fully satisfied with it? So this having the option of inspection, that when you buy something that has been described sufficiently for you, so it's a valid sale, but you haven't yet seen it, then the Shara gives you the option of inspection. This is an option that you cannot waive. So if you say that I'm buying this item that you've described and I have no option of inspection, it is still affirmed. Because to preserve that, to preserve the rights of the buyer. So this is valid in our madhab, number one. So let's see what the author tells us. So today we're looking at a number of key outcomes. What is the definition of the option of inspection? Who has it? What triggers the option and when it lapses? What ends the option of inspection? And what inspection is? The ru'ya in some things that are not assessed by seeing, then whichever way customarily, normally inspection takes place, that's what is considered. Okay, and there's a few key concepts. What is these are some of the key concepts that we will address bi'idhnillahi subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, so the author Imam Ibrahim al-Halabi tells us rahimahullah ta'ala, فصل من اشترى ما لم يره جاز. Whoever purchases something that they have not seen, this is valid. وله رده إذا رآه, and they have the right of returning it if they see it. ما لم يوجد ما يبطله, unless something took place that ends the right of inspection. وإن رضي قبله, right? And this khiyar, this option of cancellation, exists even if one said that one was satisfied and that I will not inspect it before, right? To avoid the loss of taradi, being satisfied with the transaction, right? In a reasonable sense. Okay. So, ولا خيار لمن باع ما لم يره. There's no option of inspection for the one who sells something that they hadn't seen. So Zubair got an order of new pens. And it was sufficiently described, etc. But he hadn't actually seen it. He sold them. After saying, they're better than I thought. I didn't want to sell them. There's no option of inspection. If he wanted to consider, do I really want to sell this? What could he specify for himself? Yes, he could specify the option of the cancellation, khiyar shart, if he wanted that. Okay. So the option of inspection, right, the first thing is definition and scope, right? That they have, whoever buys anything that they haven't seen, this is permissible. And they have the right of canceling when they see it. It is permissible as long as it is described sufficiently to them, right? Jaz, right? As long as it's described sufficiently to them, right? That's very important. How is something sufficiently known? A thing is sufficiently known by defining what is it, the jins, what category of item it is, and giving sufficient description of its qualities, its attributes, its details that lift gross uncertainty. Right? That lift gross uncertainty. So we'll see when we come to the Bay' al-Fasid some further details, but the item of sale has to be defined sufficiently. Right? If it's present, then khalas, I sell you this for $100. If you wanted more details, what it is, the buyer, the mushtari, has to ask. But if it's being described, it has to be described sufficiently to lift gross uncertainty. The slight lack of clarity, that's what the option of inspection, khiyar ru'ya, gives. Okay. And he has the option, if they, to cancel once they see it, right? وَلَهُ رَدُّهُ, and this is what the option of inspection, khiyar ru'ya, is. لَهُ رَدُّهُ إِذَا رَآهُ. He has the right of returning it once they see the item. They have the, and okay, so there's a few things. إِذَا رَآهُ, and the definition, and once they see it, meaning, then what's meant by ru'ya, as mentioned by Imam al-Haskafi rahimahullah ta'ala in his commentary, يعني إذا رآه أي المراد بالرؤيا العلم بالمقصود. What's meant by ru'ya is that which conveys, that gives you knowledge of the purpose of the sale. So in perfume, just seeing the bottle is not sufficient. The inspection would be for you to smell it. If you're buying some food items, you bought 100 kilos of rice, it would be to taste it, right? Or in sugar, for example, right? So you taste a sample, and that's would be, because just seeing the sugar doesn't tell you about it, right? This is high quality saffron. Well, you see it. The color may indicate some things, and how do we know what is sufficient inspection? What is typical inspection for that item, عرفا? Okay. ما لم يوجد, right, he says, ما لم يوجد ما يبطله, unless something happens on the buyer's part that prevents the option of inspection, right? So you bought a piece of cloth, you cut it up. Now how are you going to return it? I didn't like it. You bought perfume, but you used it up. Or you bought perfume, but you mixed other perfume into it. Like, you bought some oud, you mixed some jasmine into it. So now you can't return it. So, but I didn't like the smell of the oud. Should have smelt it first before starting using it as an owner would use the item. So those things are coming. ما لم يوجد ما يبطله وإن رضي قبله. وإن رضي قبله, meaning that so this is in wasliya. This connects that he has له رده. He has the right to cancel it if you bought it without seeing it. even if, even if he had said that he's pleased, يعني قبلها, يعني that I'm satisfied with the sale, and I don't want the khiyar al-ru'ya, right? So, and there's no time period for khiyar al-ru'ya until the buyer does something that would cancel it, which we will see. Okay, so this option is important because it preserves the rights of the buyer. So there's no time period for it. And this is the relied upon position of the madhab, because normally people buy something to use it. Right? However, they are of, and you can read the discussion in Sheikh Zada, particularly, some suggested a reasonable time period. Sheikh Mustafa Zarqa in in Aqd al-Bay' suggests a year, or what would be customary period for that matter, for that item of sale, lest the seller be harmed. If someone purchased perfume and they didn't smell it for a year, then they smelt it and they tried to return it, right? The buyer now may have moved on from that line of perfumes, that there'd be harm. Okay. تماما. Then he says, rahimahullah ta'ala, right, that when is the option of inspection established, right? What ends the option of inspection? ويبطل خيار الرؤية ويبطل خيار الرؤية ما يبطل خيار الشرط. The option of inspection is annulled by all that annuls the option of cancellation, خيار الشرط. Right? Right? من تعييب, right? Yeah, right? Of causing it damage. تعييب. Of it becoming damaged. تعييب. Right? أو تعيب. Right? Or you damaging it becoming damaged, or you damaging it when it is in your possession, in the possession of the buyer. What تعذر رد بعضه, or if you're not able to return some of the item. How would you not be able to return some of the item? You ate it, right? You're either it perished or you used it up. بتعيب, right? بهلاك, it perished. So you bought 5 bottles of perfume in one sale. One of them broke. Now, how are you going to return that? Or if you bought a simpler example, you bought 50 kilos of rice. A donkey came, ate 2 kilos of it raw. So how are you going to return the rest, right? Or you consumed it. Can you return the rest? The basis in the madhab is no, because it's not the full item of sale. Right? Now, then he says, وتصرف لا يفسخ. Right? And it's also the option of inspection is lifted by any act that is irrevocable. Right? Any act that is irrevocable. What is example of an act that is irrevocable? كالإعتاق وتوابه, like freeing the slave, because once they're free, they cannot be unfreed. So you bought a slave, you hadn't seen him, but he'd been described. And then you freed him. Then you say, oh, I didn't like the slave, I want to give him back. You can't cancel it because that tasarruf, that act, is irrevocable and you cannot go back on it. Like freeing the slave and the like of that. أو يوجب حقا للغير, or it entails right for a third party. كالبيع المطلق والرهن والإجارة, such as you sold the item. What's the case there? That you purchased an international power adapter, and this power adapter, you hadn't seen it, but it had been described to you. You took possession of it and you sold it to another party. Then you saw them using it, the power adapter. You purchased, Zubayr purchased the power adapter from Zubaydah. It was described what it is, how many ports it has, whatever else. And then he sold it without having seen it. Now, once it's sold, how can you cancel the sale? Right? Likewise, giving the item purchased, the mabir, as a rahan, as collateral, or renting it out. Right? And like that, not mentioned in the Matn, is gifting it to a third party and they're taking possession of it. So these are things that entail rights of another party, and you cannot go back on these things soundly. So he says, قبل الرؤية وبعدها. This is whether you had seen it already or after you had seen it. Okay? قبل الرؤية عفوا وبعدها. Right? Because these rights of the third party prevent fasakh, prevent annulling the contract. So the option of inspection is necessarily then terminated from the original sale. Okay. وما لا يوجب حقا للغير كالبيع بالخيار والمساومة والهبة بلا تسليم يبطل بعدها لا قبلها. And as for those acts that do not entail an affirmed right for a third party, such as selling it with the option of cancellation, بالخيار, we say al-khiyar, what's meant is khiyar al-shart, the option of cancellation. So what happens? Zubayr purchased this international power adapter, and it was described to him, etc., but he hadn't actually seen it. He hadn't actually inspected it. Purchased it. If Zubayr then sells the power adapter to a third party with the option of cancellation. So now, with the option of cancellation, ownership doesn't transfer to the other part, to the person he sold it to. So this does not negate khiyar al-ru'ya. Wal musawama, which is negotiating. You negotiated with another party, but you haven't made a sale. Wal hiba bila taslim, or gifting without, without transferring, without the person you gifted it to taking possession. These things يبطل بعدها, these end the khiyar al-shart, khiyar al-ru'ya, after them. لا قبلها, but does not lift the khiyar ru'ya after them. So after it, after these acts, why? Because so يبطل بعدها أي بعد الرؤية. So right, so if once you see the item in these things and you're satisfied with it, so you sold it to Zubayr and you saw it in his hands, or you sold it to Zubair with the option of cancellation, it's in his hand, and you see it, then it's still in your possession, right? Because if you have khiyar shart, it's still in your possession. So what would happen? It does not entail third party right yet because he doesn't own it. Then if you see it in his hand, it's as if you saw it. Similarly, with the during musawama, when you're negotiating, you know, um, Zubair's wife, she brings out, she's also gets in on the sale. She says, you know what, you should really see this power bar. It's really good. So Zubair's wife brings it out. Um, the you know the person they're negotiating with sees it. So Zubair sees it in his hand. It's as if he saw it. So the khiyar there, he would have to say, no, I don't. I want to cancel the original transaction. If he didn't, his right of cancellation, Zubair was trying to sell his power bar, having not seen it before, would end. But before it would not end because the whole farad, the masala is he hasn't seen the item that he has sold. And then what is ru'ya? He tells us وكفت رؤية وجه الرقيق والدابة وكفلها. It is sufficient to see the face of the raqiq, of the abd, and of the animal. This is the animal that is ridden. And it's وكفلها, and its legs, right? So what it's, you don't have to see the whole item. So for example, there's a shirt that is being sold. If you see the top part of the shirt, because there may be decorations there, you can tell the pattern, the quality of the cloth. The shirt doesn't have to be fully opened. If you wanted to see more, that would have been upon you at that time. And likewise, so that what is sufficient, right, to know, to assess the item and its purpose. So he says, وفي شاة اللحم لابد من الجس. And for a shah, for a sheep that is being purchased for its meat, one has to feel it. وفي شاة القنية لابد من رؤية الضرع. And for the the sheep that is that is being kept, not to be slaughtered, but is being kept on one's property for the purpose of reproduction, for the purpose of milk, etc., then you have to see the udders because they indicate whether it'll give milk, how it'll be in terms of reproduction, etc. Right? And likewise with each animal, what do you need to see to assess its stated purpose? We don't have to go into ورؤية ظاهر الثوب إن لم يكن يعني معلما كافية. And seeing the outer part of the the ظاهر الثوب, the upper part of the garment, like if it's folded up, just see the upper part of the garment is sufficient if it doesn't have embroidery, right? معلما, if it doesn't have embroidery. So that if it يعني and if it does have embroidery, then you have to see all the embroidery. Right? ورؤية عالمه إن كان معلما. You have to see the embroidery if it has embroidery. And this returns to urf. So regarding this breakdown, Imam al-Haskafi says that some of the ulama said that this is according to their urf. Um, um, and he said, al-Haskafi says that it said in our urf, you have to see the whole garment. And it would depend on, you know, on on time and space, on the urf in a particular line. Like if you're buying a jacket, you would want to see its lining, for example, etc. Okay. And there's a practical component, which is that one strives to seek the way of clarity in these items. And here I'd encourage you to check out Majalla items 331 and 333 as well. Right? Okay. What about if you purchase a house, do you have to see the rooms as well? Right? And the text itself is talking about the dar, and the dar is a residential property. الدار ما يدار حوله الحيطان. Right? The dar is that which walls are built around. So here, you know, and this would often be, like there's a wall. It could be a wall, then gardens, then the property. But the Muslims generally, particularly in cities, they'd have, a wall property. There'd be a dar. The garden would be inside the property. Right? So you enter, the dar is that what there's walls. So it'd be like a residential property, but the garden would not be outside the property, would be inside. It's almost symbolic of the heart of the believer. The heart, which is the most precious part, is inside, it's not on display. So, anyways, the dar, you enter and there is the courtyard. During the time of Imam Abu Hanifa, the courtyard, right? The sahn al-bayt is sufficient. Right? The sahn al-bayt, the courtyard, because it would be indicative of the quality of the home, the size of the home. You see that? It would be sufficient. You wouldn't have to see the buyut. The bayt, al-bayt ma yubatu fihi. A bayt in classical Arabic refers to, you wouldn't have to see the individual rooms. Because if you've seen the courtyard inside, you can tell the quality of the house. This is the position of Imam Abu Hanifa and his sahibain. Why? Because in their time, if you entered the dar, the residential property, you entered the courtyard, you could tell you could tell the size, and by the quality of the courtyard, you would be able to assess the quality of the rooms, and the rooms were on a pattern, they did not differ. However, this is a position where the fatwa is different from this. ورؤية داخل الدار يعني a كافية, seeing the inside of the residential property, i.e. the sahn, right, the courtyard, is sufficient. وإن لم يشاهد بيوتها, even if one doesn't see the individual rooms. This is the position of our three imams, Imam Abu Hanifa, Abu Yusuf, and Imam Muhammad, because in their time, this was considered sufficient. And the principle is that كفت رؤية ما يحصل به العلم بالمقصود. It's enough, it's sufficient to see that which you now know the purpose of the sale. That's the primary thing. Everything else is a detail. No difference of opinion, no argument would arise as a result. So this would lift خيار الرؤية. However, this is not the fatwa position. وعند زفر رحمه الله لا بد من مشاهدة البيوت. However, according to Imam Zufar, contrary to our three imams of our madhab, it is necessary, here لابد, it is necessary to see the individual rooms. وعليه الفتوى اليوم. And this is the position on which the fatwa is in our times. Why? So they say this is as Imam al-Haskafi puts it, هذا اختلاف عصر وزمان. This is a difference of time and age, and not a difference of dalil and or hujjah and burhan. Not that his proof is stronger, but the underlying principle is you it's sufficient to see that which indicates the purpose of the sale. You don't have to see all the details for the option of inspection to finish. In our times, in even in the time of Imam Zufar, in the generation after, the urf had changed. So just seeing the courtyard would not be sufficient to assess whether the house was satisfactory, right? Um, and this returns to urf. If you're buying a home, what do you have to see for for your inspection to be complete? The safe thing is, before making the sale, ensure that there's a full inspection, and so there's no disagreement. It's best to put it in writing as well. And this is the fatwa position. And so this is the first part of the lesson. We'll